Today on the podcast, I want to do something a little bit different. This time of year can really suck when you are in the depths of struggling with fertility. When you're navigating family events, answering questions that you'd rather not be asked, and it is a constant reminder that you are not where you hope to be by this time. So amongst all of this, I want to share with you a story of hope so that no matter where you are on your own journey, you're able to see what is possible. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and listening and tuning in today. This episode is dropping 2 days before Christmas, and I know it is such a hard time of year. Even if you are not particularly religious, it's so hard to not be surrounded by all of the things that are happening at this time of year. No matter where you are in the world, it just seems to be a time where families are together, happy families are celebrating. And again, it is just this constant reminder that you're not where you thought you would be. So maybe you followed me for a while and maybe you know my story and how I got here and how I ended up doing the work that I do now. But today I want to share my story with you. I absolutely loved listening to other women when I was struggling through my own fertility journey. And a spoiler alert, really liked hearing the ones that had a happy ending. So I think there's a lot of comfort in hearing from women who have walked this path before you. And I also feel like there is so much happening in the fertility space at the moment. There's so much that is changing. I see that there are so many of these AI platforms that are coming at the moment, which are amazing. And don't get me wrong, I love AI as much as the next person. Simplify, automate my life. Thank you very much. Whatever works. But at the same time, I feel like we're starting to lose a little bit of that human connection that is so essential when you are going through something difficult like infertility. And we forget that it is so important to come into human connection in order to really regulate our nervous systems. And I want you to feel held and supported throughout your own journey. And I want you to feel this at this time of the year, especially. So that's why I'm going to share my journey with you. And if you've heard this story before, I'm probably going to add a few more things here and there because, I don't have to do it in a 10-minute kind of normal time span that I would normally try and squeeze my journey into. So I hope that you recognize a little bit of what is possible on your own journey along the way. So I'm going to take you back to 2012. I was a month away from turning 30. I was a Pilates instructor. I did a lot of clinical work. I worked 6 days a week, 40 plus classes a week. I would run training courses on weekends. I also trained and worked out every single day myself. I was the healthy one. I knew everything there was to know about being healthy, or so I thought. I also worked at a studio where they specialized in a lot of pre and postnatal work. So I was constantly surrounded by pregnant women. And of course, this is going back over a decade, but there really was not a lot of chat around those who struggled to fall pregnant and those who were, going through IVF or those who had gotten pregnant through treatments. So it really wasn't on my radar that there would be any trouble when I wanted to have a baby because I thought I'm healthy, I'm surrounded by women, they're all pregnant, they're all getting pregnant easily. There won't be any trouble when my time comes. So I met this guy on eHarmony, and this was about 6 months or so before Tinder arrived in Australia. So online dating was still considered a little bit weird. And we went out this first night, and I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed so much in the space of a couple of hours. Anyway, fast forward about 18 months, he asked me to marry him. And then about a year and a bit after that, we got married, and it was such an incredible day. We were so, so happy, and we were so excited to embark on our lives together. But we had no idea what was coming. So about 3 months after we got married, my husband was offered a job in Bangkok, over in Thailand. So we moved from Sydney in Australia over to Southeast Asia, and we were so excited. We loved Southeast Asia. We had gone there for a honeymoon, and we were, really ready to dive into this next chapter of our lives. So we spent a few months kind of traveling and exploring and sort of deciding what, all the things that we thought, we won't be able to do these when we have kids, so let's do it all now. And then we decided, okay, it's time. We're excited to start a family. Let's get the ball rolling. So I went off birth control, and my cycle never returned. I was 33 by this stage, and I thought, well, I've heard stories where it can take a few months for things to kind of re-regulate and get back to normal. So we waited for about 3 or 4 months. And I went to my doctor. I said, hey, I'm just kind of checking in. Is this anything I should be concerned about? Is there anything I should be doing? And her response was, no, look, for some women, it can take a few months for your cycle to re-regulate. Don't worry, just keep waiting. Nothing to be concerned about. So we waited and we waited. And then I started investigating other kind of non-medical ways to help my cycle return. So I started going to acupuncture. I did the Chinese herbs. I took a few supplements. Nothing seemed to help. So it was at about the 12-month mark that we started to get pretty worried. So we went back to my doctor, and her response was, yeah, things should have helped by now. Your cycle should have returned by 12 months. I mean, you got no health issues. There's no reason why that shouldn't happen. So she referred us to a fertility doctor, and this was the first time that we had any kind of testing done. And he said to me, look, it's probably just, again, still a matter of time. Don't worry too much. So he ran a whole bunch of tests, and a couple of days later he said, oh, just come back in and I'll give you the results. And I remember walking into that tiny room, this cramped room, and this doctor just had this glum look on his face. And we sat down, and he slid this piece of paper across the desk to me, and he said, I'm sorry, but I think you've gone through early menopause. And I was so taken aback. I was shocked. I could not believe that this was a diagnosis. I was like, surely he must be wrong. We've missed something. Definitely. I was 34 by this stage. My mum had gone through menopause when she was 50. We had no health issues. I thought, no, this can't be me. But he said the numbers didn't lie. And we did an internal ultrasound, and it showed I had one follicle on one ovary and none on the other. And I was also told my ovaries looked a little bit shrunken, which is something that often happens when you go into menopause. So we were pretty devastated, and the doctor said to us, look, I think your only option is to try IVF, and that way we can really try and get your body to respond, and I think you should do it right away. I said, look, can't we just is there anything else we can do first? I don't want to go from this to jumping straight into IVF. It felt like too much for me. So he agreed to try a few rounds of Clomid to see if it would get me to ovulate, which we did. We tried 3 rounds and my body didn't respond. So he said, okay, we've tried that. There really isn't a lot else that we can do. I think you need to go and consider IVF. So we did. And I was pretty disappointed to have to consider something as huge as IVF. So early after receiving such a crazy diagnosis. But at the same time, I was also relieved, because when you are experiencing fertility issues and you think, well, I don't know what's going to work, but at least there's IVF. I've got that light at the end of a very dark tunnel if I need it. So I felt that way. I'm like, okay, well, nothing's worked. Nothing's really helped me so far. At least we can try this. So we started our first round of IVF in Bangkok, and I didn't respond to the meds at all. So every couple of days, I would go back in to get my blood work done. They would check on ultrasound to see if my ovaries had responded at all. They kept upping my dose and upping my dose of medication to the point where I was basically on the maximum amount they could possibly give you, and my body didn't respond even a tiny bit. So after 14 days, our cycle was cancelled. And my doctor kind of shrugged her shoulders and said, look, I don't really know what else I can do for you here. This was a pretty devastating time to think that, well, maybe IVF isn't even an option. We don't know where to go from here. So we decided to take a little bit of a break. She suggested we take 3 months and just continue on a few supplements to see if my body responded in any way to those. But I thought, I don't really feel like I've gotten any more information here. So I did a little bit of research, and I had a couple of friends back in Sydney who had had success getting pregnant with this one particular fertility doctor. So I set up a virtual consult with her, and she went through all of my paperwork, and she said, look, I don't really like the protocol they put you on for that cycle. I think I can help you. I think that there are things that we can do here. So we waited about 3 months, and I worked at this time with a wonderful fertility naturopath, and we flew back to Sydney and we did our second cycle. And things didn't really go that well, but we did end up getting a response to the medication, and I ended up with 3 eggs. So they collected 3 eggs, which was amazing. I thought there's no way we're going to go from not even collecting 1 to collecting 3. But I thought, wow. Then we got the news the next day that only 1 of them had fertilized. So I basically wrote off that cycle completely. I was like, okay, well, I was kind of under the impression this could take a few rounds, but look, we've got this 1 embryo. We'll see how it goes. I didn't have high hopes. And after that transfer, in this 2-week wait, for goodness knows what reason, I developed a cyst on my eye that needed to be removed via surgery. So I had to go, it was just ridiculous. I had to go and see this ophthalmologist and have this cyst surgically removed. So I was on anesthetic, all of these things that you shouldn't be doing in early pregnancy. And so I thought, well, this is just the end of this round of IVF. I don't know why we even bothered. And it was just so ridiculous, the timing of all of these things. I just hid myself in my room, put the covers over my head, and didn't want to talk to or see anyone. I was so miserable. But then it worked. And we found out that that 1 little embryo made it all the way. She was a fighter from day 1, and she still is. And that little girl is now 7. So that was my first fertility journey. My husband and I are only children, and we had always discussed having a family and having at least 2 kids. Looking back now, I think I'd still have another 10 kids if I could. But look, 2 kids was our goal at the time. And so we thought, okay, well, this IVF thing worked. We're just going to go back to Sydney. We'll go and see the same doctor, and we'll just do it all again. Things will be fine. But then the most incredible thing happened. When my daughter was 1, I stopped breastfeeding and my cycle returned. I went to the bathroom one day and my period was back. And I was like, surely this isn't real. This is like a fluke. This is like some kind of postpartum delayed bleeding or whatever. But no, it came back the next month and the one after that, and I couldn't believe it. My cycle had started again. I wasn't in early menopause after all. At this stage, we had moved from Bangkok to Dubai. My husband had been offered another role within his company. So we thought, like, another exciting adventure, let's go. So we packed up and we moved to Dubai. And I went to a new doctor and I said, look, here's my story. I guess I'm ovulating again. Can you run any tests and just sort of see what's going on? She said, no problem. So she ran a few basic tests and she said, look, your hormone levels aren't amazing for your age, but you are ovulating. There is no reason why you can't try naturally at home. So go for it. And we thought this was a done deal. We thought, well, this is the one thing we didn't have the first time. We never even got to try. I didn't even have any concept of trying to conceive and taking pregnancy tests. Like, it just wasn't my experience at all. So we did. And I think we tried at home naturally for about 6 months and nothing happened. So I went back to this new doctor in Dubai and I said, me again. I just would like to know if there's anything else we can do to kind of help the process. I was 37 by this stage, I think. And she said, look, we'll run a few additional tests and we'll run a high cozy to see if your tubes are open and we'll go from there. So she did. And we ended up with a whole bunch of new fertility issues that we never had the first time. And we thought this journey was going to be so easy, but it ended up being much more difficult and much longer than the first journey. So we found out that I had a thyroid condition. I had very high FSH levels, very low AMH. My levels were pretty much at 0. I had very low progesterone. We found out that my tubes were partially blocked, and we also found out we had a small amount of male factor fertility issues going on as well. So with all of these new issues put together, she said, look, I think IVF is your best option here, honestly, considering your age and everything else that you've got going on. What happened last time? I think just go straight back to IVF. And I was like, I'm not ready to do that again. I found it really difficult. And I want to keep trying without going down that path for a little while. So she agreed to try a few rounds of letrozole. She said that I would then be given progesterone support to help extend and support my cycle and potentially early pregnancy. And we worked with a new naturopath, and we really focused as much as we could on egg quality and sperm quality and getting my body in as best shape as possible for pregnancy. And it was around this time that my type A personality went into overdrive. And look, if there was a test for who did all of the fertility prep the best, I would get 100% on that exam. I can tell you, I went to acupuncture 3 times a week. I went to hypnosis twice a week. I was doing my daily fertility meditations where I put my earphones in. I'm going to relax right now. I was taking 19 different supplements every single day. I had read all the books and I just decided I'm going to take all the supplements because more is more. That can only be helping me. What else did I find? I found a woman who did fertility massage and a woman who did fertility reflexology. So I kept going to those appointments every single week. It was a lot. Even now, just thinking about it, like I am exhausted thinking about all of the things that I was doing to quote unquote help my fertility. And I guess it's no surprise that it was around this time I developed chronic insomnia. It kind of crept up on me. It started where, it just take me a bit longer to fall asleep. And then I'd be waking up 3 or 4 times a night. And then it got to the point where I couldn't fall asleep at all. So I ended up being put on sleeping tablets, anti-anxiety medication, and I was taking like a high dose of these just to be able to get some sleep. It was so debilitating and affecting every part of my life. And I was taking hormone meds. I was on progesterone. I was on letrozole to help me ovulate. I look back at this time now and I'm like, no shit, I wasn't pregnant. Like my poor body, the things that I was pushing myself through and, just demanding so much of myself and trying to control everything. And, there was not even space to breathe. So after we had done about 5 or 6 rounds of letrozole, nothing had happened. My doctor said, look, your only option really is IVF. And I thought, fine, we'll go back. Look, it worked the last time. I'm sure it's just a matter of doing it again. We can finally put our breeding years behind us and move on with our lives. And I was really struggling with secondary infertility as well. I had so many friends who, had this 18-month to 2-year age gap between their kids, and the shame and the guilt that comes with secondary infertility. I had this beautiful little girl at home, and I couldn't be present with her. I couldn't just take a moment to be around her and enjoy being with her without the guilt of not giving her a sibling and the shame that comes from wanting more than what I already had. And there's so many people still struggling to have their first baby, and how dare I ask for more? And gosh, it's so many years ago, but you can still hear the emotion in my voice. This journey is big and it takes so much from you, and it is not for the faint-hearted. So we found a wonderful doctor in Dubai. I found the clinics in Dubai were a little bit easier to navigate than the ones in Bangkok, just because of a lot of the language and the cultural barriers were not so high. And I went to every clinic in town. I think there were only about 5 or 6 clinics in Dubai at that stage. I went to all of them, met all the doctors, chose the one I liked the best. So I paid to the end. And it was one of those cycles that was perfect on paper. He was this amazing man. And we ended up with 2 perfect embryos from that cycle. And we couldn't believe it. We actually couldn't believe it. We thought, I was 3 years older than I was the last time we had done IVF. I thought, definitely we're going to have to do more than one round. I thought, gosh, 2 embryos. We transferred them both because we thought, hey, why not have the possibility of twins? And then our family is more than complete. I feel so naive looking back at all the things that were going through my mind. Embryos were great quality, and we were convinced we were pregnant. I was so sure throughout that 2-week wait that it was all done. We could finally move on with our lives. But we got the call after 10 days to say that it wasn't successful. And I was in shock. And I think my husband had to take the phone from me and thank the doctor and then hang up the phone. And then I just cried and screamed for ages. And then to make matters worse, the next day, this was in March of 2020, and we went into lockdown over COVID. So even if we had wanted to do another cycle, we didn't even have the option, because every single clinic had closed down. And around the world, clinics were closing down. So it wasn't even an option for me to go back to Australia. The borders were closed. We thought that that was the end of our journey. And I was pretty convinced that it was. And looking back now, I think this was my lowest point. This was my point where I knew I had done everything in my power to get pregnant, and nothing had worked. It didn't matter how perfect I was, or how much gluten and dairy and alcohol and caffeine I cut out of my life. And I took all the supplements. I did everything my doctor said, and nothing worked. And I had these moments of being awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, of just crying on the bathroom floor, just thinking, I guess my life is going to look different to what I thought my family is going to look different. And I'm so grateful to have my daughter, but I guess I'm going to have to move on. And it was around this time that a girl I used to work with, who was a yoga teacher, she said to me, Jen, I don't know if you're interested, but I know this girl that I work with who teaches fertility yoga. Do you want to give it a go? And I was like, no, not really. No, thanks. I've just been through another round of IVF. What is a bit of yoga going to do? But I thought about it a little bit. I was like, we were in lockdown. I couldn't even go to work. So I was at home literally all day, every day, as so many of us were. I thought, what's one more thing? I'm going to give it a go. And so I met with this woman. She was from Melbourne in Australia. So we met over Zoom. And she gave me these really gentle practices to do. And I started practicing them each and every day. And this is going to sound really dramatic, but these practices changed my life completely. Here's where it's one of those sliding doors moments where my life I thought was going to look one direction, but it completely changed paths. After a couple of weeks, it was little things that I started to notice were changing in my life. I would get up in the morning and just be a little bit nicer to my husband. He used to sort of mention that I was a little bit easier to live with. Bless him, poor man, dealing with this crazy hormonal mess that he was. I found it easy to be present with my daughter. And that was huge for me, to be able just to sit there and be with her and not go through all of the million things in my mind that were causing me so much stress and anxiety. And then little things started to turn into big things. I then started to sleep more easily. For anyone who has had chronic insomnia would know, it takes over your entire life. It is debilitating. And I suddenly was able to fall asleep. I would stay asleep and I would wake up and I'd actually feel good for the first time in months and months. And then I stopped taking my sleeping tablets and my anxiety tablets completely. Then even bigger things than that started to shift for me. A couple of months after I had started these practices, I was going in regularly to get my thyroid checked to make sure my meds were okay. And my thyroid started to heal. And I hadn't changed anything. I hadn't changed my medication. This was the only thing in my life that was different. And then in July of 2020, I felt pregnant naturally. And this was mind-blowing, to put it lightly. It was a massive understatement. We couldn't believe it. It was the most unexpected thing. And we went to the doctor. We had all of the tests confirmed. My HCG levels were rising. My progesterone levels looked great. We were over the moon. We were so, so relieved that our journey was finally over. And we had gotten pregnant naturally. No doctor told me that this was possible. I think after that last round of IVF, I was given 5% chance of IVF working, let alone falling pregnant on my own. I mean, who even knows where they get these statistics from? But it had happened, and it had happened for us. So we started getting excited. We booked in our dating scan to get our first ultrasound. So we went in, it was about 6.5 weeks pregnant, and I had ovulated quite late that month. So we weren't 100% sure how far along I was. So we went in, and the ultrasound tech was very, very quiet. And she said, look, it's still very early. It's possible that you ovulated later than you thought. And I didn't think that was the case, but we weren't 100% sure. And she said, I would like to have seen a bit more growth for a pregnancy of this duration. So come back in a week and we'll check again just to make sure everything's progressing okay. And this was the longest week of my life. This was the longest wait I had ever had to endure to find out if my baby was okay. And we went in a week later, and we heard those words that far too many women have heard countless times all over the world. I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat, and your baby isn't developing at all. So it was confirmed that we had lost the pregnancy, and we had a D&C later on that day. And this was a really dark time. Don't get me wrong. I struggled to get out of bed and be a parent and function and do normal things. But there was something playing at the back of my mind, because I had done this thing that I was told wasn't possible. I had gotten pregnant on my own, and I had this feeling that I could do it again. I remember sitting in a meditation one day, and I remember asking my body, my yoga teacher had said, I want you to ask yourself, is there anything that you're missing? Is there anything that your body wants to tell you? And I thought, that's kind of a weird thing to ask myself. I'm listening to my body all day long. Of course, I would know if there was something going on that I needed to be aware of. So I did that one day, and I can't even tell you, clear as day, you can't explain this. These words came into my ear that said, you never even gave me a chance. And I couldn't believe how right those words were, because all of the months that I had been pushing and controlling and grasping and sitting in this desperate energy of, I'm going to make you get pregnant no matter what it takes, that got me nowhere. And it was only this one little practice that allowed me to take a step back and say, what is it that my body needs? What is it that my nervous system is desperate for? And honestly, it was that time and space to breathe, to have those moments of my day where I didn't need to be anywhere. I didn't need to be doing. I didn't need to be pushing or controlling, because I was under the assumption that we would have to do IVF again eventually if the clinics ever reopened, and, if I had any eggs left by that stage. I never in a million years thought that this would happen for me naturally, but it did. And as someone with a exercise science background, and someone who'd really been looking at exercise and movement from a very kind of clinical perspective for many, many, many years, I wanted to know why. I wanted to know the science behind how these practices had helped me get pregnant. So I decided to become a yoga teacher. So I went back and I retrained. Later on in 2020, there were a few studios that were starting to reopen. A lot of the work initially was online, but then we were able to go back and do our training face to face. And I loved it. It was so different to a lot of the training that I had done before. I was really humbled by what I learned. I kind of approached it with, well, what new things are they going to be able to teach me? I know everything about the human body and all the origin and insertion points of muscles and all the body. I thought I knew it all, but I knew nothing. And I found a training school that specialized in women's health and fertility yoga. And I decided to dive into these practices and learn as much as I could. And the more I learned, the more inspired I got. And the more I realized the one thing I had been missing on this whole journey was asking what I needed, what my body needed. Not pushing, not asking what's the next supplement I can take, what X number of second, third opinions from different doctors can I get? Because they're ultimately, a lot of them were kind of, coming to the same conclusion. And I thought, there is so much here that I didn't know. So I put all these practices into my own life. And at the very, very end of 2020, at about this time of the year, 5 years ago, I fell pregnant again, naturally. And this time it felt right. It felt like my baby was ready. And it felt like I had come along this journey for a reason. And that little boy is now 4. And so that is my journey. And that is the reason I do the work that I do. Because no one told me any of this stuff. No one taught me how to regulate my nervous system and how important that was. No one told me that there was a way to actually feel good throughout this whole journey, as opposed to constantly feeling miserable and comparing myself to others and to wishing more than anything that my life would just pass and I would just get to that day where I'd be finally pregnant. But I was missing so much in the meantime. I was missing quality time with my daughter and being able to connect with my husband. And I feel like there were so many years where things weren't going well, and I just remember being miserable. And not that I regret anything, because it has led me to where I am now, but if I had known there would be another way, gosh, I wish I would have had all of these tools at the very start of my journey. And I could only imagine how it would have worked out. But here we are. And it worked out the way that it did, because it worked out the way that it did. And so now I have made it my mission to show you what you are capable of and how much your body is capable of. And I truly, truly believe, after seeing and working with hundreds, probably thousands of women by this stage, that we are capable of so much more than we are told. So at this time of the year, I just hope that my story can give you a little bit of a sense of what is possible in this world. And I want to send you so much love, no matter where you are and what you're doing, or even if you're listening to this episode and it's not Christmas or New Year's and it's at a different time and you're still struggling in the midst of everything you're going through. I just want to send you so much love, and all my prayers are with you. So this is our last episode for 2025, and I want to thank you for being here with me and for sharing all of everything that I've shared. I think we've posted about 60 episodes this year, which is wild to think how far it's come from a couple of years ago. It's just such an honor to be able to share everything with you. And I love hearing all of your feedback, your emails, your messages that you send me. Please keep them coming. I love hearing from you. So until next year, all of my love and all my prayers are with you as you continue your own journey to fertility.
The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.